Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I'm happy to be talking with you today. I'm really excited. We have a great show today. I'll be talking with Ariel from Sevens Residential Memory Care and a family member of someone who is a resident there. And we'll be talking about that transition and what it's like and how they are communicating so that the family can stay in touch with what's happening with their loved one. So we will get to that in just a short minute. First, a quick 15-minute video. Welcome back. This is Kathy Wells with Serenity, and I am here with Ariel and Tracy, and I'm very excited. Ariel it works with Sevens Residential Memory Care, and Tracy is a family member of someone who's there. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ariel, I would love if you would tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do at Sevens, and also what brought you into senior care.
So I started with Sevens about 4 years ago, so I've been with them for a while. I got into healthcare. I originally worked as a nanny in college, and one of the families that I worked with had a chronically ill child. And the mom just thought that I did a really great job dealing with managing her care, and she thought the things that made me good at nannying would lend itself well to healthcare. So I started at Sevens actually as a caregiver and administrative assistant. And then I just worked my way up. And now I'm one of the co-administrators for the Sevens Residential Memory Care.
And you've been there 4 years. And what does it mean to be a co-administrator?
So we have 10 houses in total. And so we have 4 administrators that run all of the houses. I primarily work at the Lakewood location, but I'll help out with like the other locations when on call and things like that. And then vice versa, the other administrators will help out at the Lakewood location.
Awesome. And you have a resident there, and Tracy is at the Lakewood location, and Tracy is a family member of that resident. Tracy, welcome. Can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and your background, and maybe share your mom's story and your journey?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Tracy. My mom is at Sevens, and so I guess a little bit of background on me. I'm an educational researcher, do a lot of work in the K through 12 space, and then have also worked in early childhood education with ratings and assessment. My mom, she was formerly a preschool teacher, so I think that lent itself to guiding me in that direction. So my mom, she has I guess what's considered a rare form of dementia, posterior cortical atrophy, PCA. It's sort of framed in the sense of a visual variant of Alzheimer's that affects the back part of the brain where visual processing is. So lots of challenges with depth perception and visual processing. So that then extends into the memory pieces and in that dementia Alzheimer's space. Unfortunately, with my mom, it's really been myself that has had to figure out all the pieces for her from the beginning of her starting to have challenges with her vision that have morphed into cognitive issues and so forth. But fortunately for her, she's had me, but it's been challenging because it has just been me while I was in my undergrad, while I was going through grad school, working and everything and trying to figure out her pieces too. And how to work with the state, with Medicare and Medicaid, all of that stuff without having any resources financially and such. So it's been quite a journey coming through, but
yeah. And it sounds like you were pretty young at the time, comparatively. Most, I can't say most, but I think a majority of family members who have a loved one in senior care are probably around my age, more sandwich generation, 40s, 50s. You were in undergrad.
Yes, yeah, and unfortunately, some of her challenges that started coming up were when I was middle school and high school, and then morphed into what it has been today. But yeah, still quite young in the 20s, and she's in her early 60s. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about the journey of when did you first transition her into residential care, and what did that look like?
Yeah, so she, let's see, so that's been over a year ago. So it was well over a year ago. She was first, I guess, placed her in a assisted living. I mentioned kind of the challenges with the state, with Medicaid, Medicare, and figuring that all out. Unfortunately, with my mom having been a preschool teacher, she didn't have a lot of money, has never had a lot of money, retirement, anything like that. So we really had to lean on the state and resources to get help. And so after years of pulling all of it together, with finally getting her diagnosed and such, was able to get on with InnovAge, who then helped with finding assisted living. The home that my mom was in for less than a year, unfortunately, was unable to meet her needs, and there were a couple of serious instances, injuries, that I had to intervene and help with hospital and things of those sorts, due to her vision and not getting the help she needed. So from that point, well, actually, it was one of the last incidences that happened that were a threat to her safety and well-being. I worked again with InnovAge and the social worker there to try to find other opportunities, options, and very fortunately, Sevens came up, and we've gone from there. And she's been there for a while now.
That's excellent. So really, InnovAge was a good resource for you, is what I'm hearing.
Yes. In her case, it was.
Yeah, and unfortunately, some of us have to go through that process of transitioning from one place to another, and we hope that we don't have to do that with our loved ones, because, as we all know, it's really, really hard on them. It's hard on us, but it really can impact their dementia as well. My mom had Alzheimer's, and we had to do that, and it's a tough thing. It can be a really tough thing to do. So then Sevens came up, and your mom transitioned into Sevens. And Ariel, can you tell us a little bit about that? When you bring in a new resident, what does that look like for the resident and for the family members?
So when someone first moves into our home, obviously communication is key. We want to make the family feel as involved as possible with the transition, because the more you know about what's going on, the more comfortable you feel. And you don't want to feel like you're just putting someone somewhere and just forgetting about them. And sometimes the adjustment is, a week or so, and sometimes it's closer to a month. Everyone's different. Adjusting to a new environment can be really difficult. But we do the assessment beforehand to make sure that we have a good handle on, the person that's moving in, because they are a person. They have their own likes and dislikes. They've had a routine for their entire lives. And so we try to really accommodate that. And in the smaller setting, it's a lot easier to do. We get to know our residents really well. And so we're able to accommodate, if they don't like a certain thing, we won't cook it for them. If they want to sleep in an extra hour, we let them. It's not super rigid.
Yeah, and you mentioned a smaller environment. So tell us a little, what does that mean for our audience? Because there's so many different options out there.
So, like I said, we have 10 homes, and all the other homes, I believe, are at 8. We have a capacity of 8 residents, and then our Lakewood home has a capacity of 12. So it gives us the ability to have a really good staff to resident ratio, typically, 1 to 4 per staff. And then also it just gives us the ability to, really make them feel like they're in a home, make them feel comfortable, and give them the ability to, make their own day. We have a plan for the day, but we're able to keep it flexible. If someone doesn't want to do an activity, if someone wants to eat a meal 30 minutes later. It's an easier thing to accommodate in a smaller environment.
Yeah. And Tracy, the previous place, was that a smaller environment? Was that a larger environment?
I think it would say it was pretty comparable, but unfortunately they didn't always have the adequate staff there. Sometimes
Okay.
they only had one there, and unfortunately I think that led to some of the challenges that occurred. It's nice to know that there's staff that can give the attention if something happens, good or bad, that somebody else is also available to be there.
Yeah, and I think for our audience, this is something that is really important if you're looking for a place, whatever that place might be. One of the questions to ask is, what is the staff ratio? And how do they manage person-centered care or purpose-centered care, which is something that Seven really focuses on, is purpose-centered care. So it's not just individualized plans for people, but it's really, in addition to that, it's creating purpose for the people who live there, because they are people, as you said, Ariel, and they have so much to offer. And the last thing we want is to have mom or dad transition into a place and have them not feel like they have a purpose in life anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know COVID has just exacerbated all of that. Tracy, tell me a little bit about how your mom is doing.
Yeah, so I think she's actually been doing very well, to my knowledge, in comparison to the previous home where she was at. Speaking of transitions, the transition with that home felt like it never really completely happened. She was constantly very upset. Of course, did not want to be there. It was a struggle, whereas here with Sevens, and I'll mention she's been there. She moved her in just about 2 weeks before COVID had hit. So
Wow.
Yeah, fortunately it all worked well there, but that transition has been a lot more smoother. Wasn't kind of kicking and screaming, so to speak, with the former. Yeah, I usually try to call her every few days or so, check in on her, usually a 5 to 10 minute phone call, see how things are going. It's been helpful with the app. Usually weekly I'll get a picture or two of her and engage in some kind of activity or an update of what's going on. As far as I'm aware, she's been doing well and continues to.
That's great. And you recently were able to visit her and celebrate a birthday?
Yes, her birthday was at the beginning of this month. So Sevens provided cake, which was great. Thank you again, Ariel. And myself, sister-in-law, and my niece and nephew. So her grandkiddos were able to be outside on the roof of the home and do a little cake gathering and presents. So that was nice to be able to see her in person and
it makes such a
for a little bit.
Yeah, it makes such a difference. So you mentioned the app, and the app that Tracy's referring to is Serenity. Serenity is used by Sevens and Assured Assisted Living. And Ariel, can you tell us a little bit about that? How has that rollout gone? What do families think? What do the staff think?
So we started off, really easing into it, mostly just posting pictures of activities. It was mostly, myself or the activities director and then a couple staff members. And basically now the goal is to have at least a one daily update per day for each resident. And, sometimes it's a little flexible, but we try to keep it at that, just to keep families informed. And I think it's been great for staff. I think it gets staff excited about what they're doing, especially because before COVID, the family and staff interactions were so fantastic. We had a lot of families that, would come and have lunch, spend the day, do things like that. And now we don't really get that. So it gives staff the ability to really connect with family in a way that they used to before COVID. And I think it helps families feel more connected to their loved one that they can't see as much.
Yeah. And when you say it gets the staff excited, do you have any like stories that you can share about what staff loves to share with families?
Yeah, well, so it's everything from, we did a fun activity today, so I get to post a cute picture of them doing this activity to, they maybe a new resident who had a hard time in the beginning, but now they've adjusted and really acclimated to the house and they're interacting and engaging with residents. They can post an update that says, so-and-so is doing really great and they're excited to, sit and talk with other residents, and so just updates like that, it gets them excited because it's like, as it's happening, they have a more, clear and concise way to communicate that with the family. And especially with, some of the younger generations, it's easier to post on an app than it is to call sometimes. And so it's been a great way to communicate.
Yeah. And to really message, right? So it's a little bit like text messaging is what Serenity is, but in a very secure environment and a group channel. So Tracy, what is your experience of receiving some of these updates and how does it impact your day?
Yeah, so kind of like what Ariel mentioned, I've received updates of different activities. So I know there was one outside where the residents were playing with the beach ball. And so I saw that with my mom. There's one where she was engaging, I think it in some kind of dance activity, one with creating bracelets with beading, and other ones just sitting, relaxing, drinking tea, pictures and with an update. So it's been nice to see that. I always like to get the little notification on my phone and look at it. And usually I'll respond, whether that's a smiley face or thank you, glad to hear, just to keep that correspondence going. So it is nice. Definitely, as I mentioned, with the move of my mom to Sevens having been right before COVID happened, I've actually being able to see her face to face has been very, very limited. Whereas in the past, in her former home, I would be there most every weekend or so, once a week to see her. So it's been kind of a process for me to kind of let go in that sense, and it's okay to have that. So in the meantime, it's been nice, and I'm sure will continue to have those updates and to see what's going on since I can't be there with COVID, at least for now. So
yeah, and I want to circle back to something that you said earlier, Tracy, about you want to have the conversations, even if they aren't always great conversations about what happened with mom, and transparency is something that is often talked about in senior care industry. It's a little bit harder for some of the staff to be able to practice that due to HIPAA laws. Mm-hmm. And so what Serenity does is it allows that transparency to happen in a platform in a streamlined way. But what I really like about what I'm hearing from both of you is that these updates are kind of like little daily deposits into an emotional bank account. If you think about Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he talks about a concept of an emotional bank account. If you put lots of deposits into the emotional bank account, then when that inevitable difficult conversation comes, you have some cushion there. You have a trusted relationship already. And so you kind of approach it as more collaborative and coming at solving the problem together rather than feeling like you've been out of the loop, right? And I think that may be what happened in your previous experience with your mom, is right. Just not having the communication changed everything. Maybe better communication, maybe.
Right. Among many things, yeah.
Yeah, it could have helped, right? Mm-hmm. So, well, I really appreciate both of you, and I would like to ask each of you as we come to the end here, what is it that you would like to see the world take forward from what we're learning during COVID?
Tracy,
go ahead, Ariel.
Or do you want me to?
Go ahead. If you have something, go ahead. Yeah, I'm thinking too.
So I think that everyone, has had to deal with kind of being more flexible in every aspect. And I think that that's kind of like the biggest takeaway. We don't really have a lot of control over some things. And as hard as it is, we have to be able to let go of that control a little bit and go with the flow, because especially with, dementia and Alzheimer's, we're all kind of figuring it out together. So we have to be flexible, and we have to be flexible with the person. We don't have control over how they're going to respond to things, and we have to be able to, really accommodate them in that way, and just.
I love that. And some of what I hear in that, Ariel, is like the power of now, right? Live in this moment. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. So try not to live into the future or what it should be, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's great. Tracy, what do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Ariel just shared. And I think going along with that would just having grace to, trying to think of the best way to say it, but yeah, grace in terms of, letting things go, letting it be, moving along, giving yourself grace, giving others grace, knowing that people hopefully have the best intentions, in this case of like with my mom and, trusting sevens, like they are going to do the best they can. They'll involve me, we'll collaborate, build together. So actually, as I'm thinking, collaboration too is a big thing in that. But lots of grace and being okay with letting it be, going with the flow.
Letting it be. You guys are too young, but the Beatles have a song, Let It Be. If we had the music queued up, we would play it right now. Thank you both so much for joining us. And if we could take just a minute, I'd like to share with our audience an ebook that we have just released today. And what a lot of people don't know is that when you move someone into senior care, you don't really know what to expect. So what we've done is put together an ebook that talks about building trust. And it's really focused on communication between staff and family in those first 14 days. This is a little sample of what it looks like. We've mapped out those first 14 days. This was not an invention of Serenity. It was actually a group of people across all of senior care done by Mavericks of Senior Living, sitting together in a room, family members, executive directors, caregivers, physicians, hospice, everyone involved in senior care, including older adults, sat down at the same table and said, all right, let's solve this problem around communication. And this is the beginnings of what came out of that. So if you're interested in that, we will put a link to download this in the show notes. Thank you very much, Ariel, for everything that you do for all of the people that you serve. Tracy, thank you for being willing to share your story. It's not easy. I've been through it myself. I know this journey is hard, and you have a lot of people around you to support you, me included. So
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.